Although it's quite wet today and has been for a few days, I'm glad to see that the river levels are nice and low on this walk, as I have a hole in my welly. Now at the height of summer, the vegetation is quite overwhelming. A lot of the paths are quite grown in. Most of this is nettles and brambles, ferns, some hemlock which is draping over the path. They can be quite difficult to navigate sometimes at this time of year, but knowing that most of it will die back is not a massive problem. There's a lot of footpaths in the area by comparison with the amount of population, so councils struggle to keep on top of them because they don't have the funding to have a constant programme of trimming. But it's quite nice that they're wild and still relatively accessible. Called Pendarves Woods, after the estate that it used to be part of. It was broken up at some point in the last century and is now in a variety of different ownerships, and as I walk around different parts of it, you can see how the different ownership has changed the landscape or has managed the landscape. In terms of the Wildlife Trust, they've got rid of a lot of the formal planting that was put in by the Pendarves estate, because this formed the periphery of their formal gardens, so there's quite a lot of rhododendrons and laurels planted here, bamboo and that sort of thing. They've eradicated a lot of that and planted a lot more native species of trees. They also put in boardwalks and things to help humans navigate the woods, but whilst also leaving the wetter land to either side and maintaining the habitat as it is. I'm finding the woodland generally very quiet at the moment, but here I can hear a few birds. There's a coal tit, and that's a greater spotted woodpecker. I can hear quite distant calls of other birds. But woodlands seem to be a lot quieter just now. I wouldn't say it's signs of autumn, but there's definitely the beginnings of some coloration to some of the leaves. Everything seems very abundant at this time of year. The paths are overgrown. The leaves are so green. So many ferns and flowers and plants, and everything's reaching its peak if it hasn't already done so. It's almost difficult to remember what it's like in winter now. These old gnarled trees that look like something out of Hansel and Gretel or a fairy tale. Sort of witchy woodland, when they're clothed in leaves, don't look the same at all. At this time of year we've got the wonderful water lilies flowering. Hopefully you can see some of the flowers. This is on the lake that was part of the Pendarves estate. Straight ahead of us and up the hill, the main house used to exist, but it was demolished in the 50s, in the 1950s, as far as I'm aware. There's now a lot of caravans which house workers for the farm, which mostly grows daffodils and things at the moment. Over in the distance, I'm not sure you can see it, but there's a little grebe, and I did hear a coot when I arrived as well. Quite often see a kingfisher here, but there's no signs of one at the moment. I've shown this lovely house in the woods before in the winter. So it definitely reminds me of a fairy tale. In the summer it's quite different, it's so densely overgrown around here at the moment. It's actually been, I don't know whether it's sold now, but it was recently on the market. I'm now out of the nature reserve and onto the bridleway. Many of these bridleways used to be main roads, main cart tracks, and they've gradually grown in and are still used by horses and bikes, but mostly on foot now. It's actually quite a wide walled track, this one, but was never adopted as a road. It's been flooded all year this time, because they're no longer used as roads. The maintenance of them tends to subside, and then the drainage ditches and culverts and things aren't maintained, so the water starts to run down their tracks and erodes the surface of the tracks. And then once the water's found its route, it just keeps coming, and it gets turned into a stream because it takes its line of least resistance. So then the tracks get quite rutted and stony. And often there are some tracks around there that become a lot deeper, into a V shape, so they're even quite hard to walk along, because there's been such a lot of water taking away the surface. I find the history of these places quite fascinating, that they had a more important function in previous years. And as I say, were often main roads for people before cars and before the need before there wasn't the need to use the shortest route. Now we don't use the shortest route, we tend to use the fastest route. But back in the Victorian times, when there weren't cars and there were only carts and foot and horse, then you'd want to take the shortest route from A to B. So there are a lot more roads in the area and tracks. Just wanted to show you the lovely stone bridge that crosses the river here. Ross just having a little drink. But it's quite a gentle flow at the moment. The other side of the bridge is the nature reserve, and the stream continues along that way.